Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome from wherever you are joining today. My name is Susan, and I'm joined by Dexibit founder Angie Judge. Welcome, Angie.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Susan.
Today, we are going to be talking about dashboard sharing and multi-tenancy. But to begin with, I will take you through a quick intro to Dexibit for anyone that may be new here. So if you're new to Dexibit, we do data analytics specifically for visitor attractions. This is for both cultural and commercial organizations, and our mission is to democratize data. And we do that by bringing together all sorts of data from around the visitor's experience and your venue's operations. So things like footfall, ticketing, CRM, point of sale, e-commerce, social web, weather, and so much more. I will share my screen now to show you what that looks like in the product. So here is Dexibit. It is software as a service. You can invite as many users as you'd like, and you can build dashboards, reports, insights, and forecasts, which you can then turn into scheduled email reports at a click of a button. In Dexibit, we have a huge library of visualizations. To add one to your dashboard, you can simply search for the topic you are looking for and add to add it in. And this is an example dashboard, so you can see lots of different data coming together in these visualizations to get everything from very high-level data right down through to the very detailed data. And you can share this data with other individuals in your organization, whether that's your direct team, your department, or leadership. So I'll hand it over to Angie now, who will show us exactly how you can share data with select users and groups.
Thanks, Susan. So I think there's a couple of different aspects today that we'll talk about in terms of data sharing and multi-tenancy more generally. I'll go ahead and share my screen as well. I want to start actually in the administration section of Dexibit. So if you're in Dexibit, this is at the bottom left-hand side. And here you have the ability to manage your account, your location, your users, and your groups, which we'll get to shortly. For a start here in your account, you can have a multi-account structure. So what that means is that you might have, say, for example, a parent entity, and then you might have child accounts coming within that. So, for example, if you've got, in my case, I've got sort of my Antarctica Institute account, and then I've got Antarctica Enterprises, my commercial locations, all sort of bottled up under one sub-account there, and then I've got my cultural group, my West Antarctica group, all bottled up under that sub-account there. Within those accounts and that account structure, I can then have all of my different locations, and Dexibit's got lots of awesome functionality for managing multiple locations if you have more than one. And particularly when you get into larger portfolios where you've got 100 or 200 locations that you need to manage for, and even just that as a data set can become quite complex. And particularly if you want to start slice and dicing by, say, brand or geography or size or age of your location. And so here, for example, you can see I've got my various 29 locations divided up between my two account groups here. And I can manage some of the information about those geographies, like, for example, where they are and what time zone they're in, all from this one place. Then I've got the ability to manage my users. So again, come in here and click invite users to add into new users, or to be able to manage the permissions or controls of various individual users. But today we're going to talk about groups, and that will lead us into sharing. And where this can be really useful is often you don't want to share dashboards, say, for example, with everybody in your entire team, which is the default mode when you share a dashboard in Dexibit if you want to share to all. And sometimes that's useful, but sometimes you might have a sub-team that you want to share to. That might be a functional department like finance or marketing, but it could also be, in effect, a publishing control like your data steering group before you then publish out to everyone. We've had some really great feedback and input from all of our users and customers that have gone into this particular structure to be able to create defined groups. So you can have multiple groups, you can have one person who's in more than one group, to be able to slice and dice your organization in different ways. So to create a group, we're going to come here in the top right hand corner. So again, how I got here is I'm clicked administration, bottom left, groups at the top, and then create group. And I simply give the group a name, like my data committee, and I then choose who I'm going to put into this group. You can see from each of these groups that I've got here, I can come into edit who is in these groups, or I can control whether I want to delete them and manage them out. And from these groups here, what we're going to do is choose a group for us to be able to share a report from. So we'll come back to the one that Susan started with here. And let's share this one. So we're going to go top right, click to share. And then we're going to go and choose one of our sharing modes. So when you come in to share a report, you have three options. One is that you can share to private, which means that only you can see it. This is only visible to you. And in Dexibit, you can have lots of different dashboards. So some of those might be things that you're using operationally or just playing with or doing some exploration with. And some of those might then be things that you're ready to publish out. The second mode is that all user mode, so publishing across the whole team. And then the third one is selected users or groups. So for example, I might want to share this dashboard with just Susan. Here we go. Or I might want to share it with a leadership group that I've created earlier. Or I might want to do both. And here I've created and shared it with leadership and with Susan, and I click save to share. The other method for a more traditional sharing is, of course, you can either email a report or download it to PDF and email it out to somebody, or you can share, schedule an email report, which will share it out to them. So here, for example, I can click and share this to Susan, and I can say operational daily report, and I can choose that I'm going to send it out Monday to Friday at 8 a.m. in the morning. And this time zone will automatically default to your current location. So what's interesting here is this will pile up a PDF and it will push it out to Susan via email. And this method of sharing is really effective if you've got users who might not be sitting at their desk, if you've got users for whom you want to sort of control the publishing of information where you don't necessarily want them to have the interactive experience that they can in a dashboard. You want that to be very fixed, like in a PDF. And it's also great for third-party users that you're trying to provide information to. For example, if you've got a third party who's managing your cafe and they want a copy of, say, forecasts and actuals to help them with their planning and analysis, but you don't necessarily want to give them data access for whatever reason directly. So you can push them out these reports in a very controlled fashion. So two very different options, sharing a dashboard or sharing a report. So that is a really quick look today at sharing. And Susan, do we have any questions that we want to get into today?
Yes, we've got a question here, and when would I need to create a sub-account structure for my organization?
That is a good question. So let's come down into administration here. So we've got our account structure that we looked at before of Antarctica Enterprises, West Antarctica Group, and Antarctica Institute being the parent organization. And these levels can get as complex as you like. So You might have 5 steps, for example, rather than just 2 that I've got here, depending on how your enterprise is structured. So I think first of all, if you've only got one location and one entity, then that's fairly straightforward. I would not use multi-tenancy features in that situation. And the same if you've only got a few locations and things are fairly simple. Where I would start to use multi-tenancy is where that is reflective of the needs of your business model. So for example, if you are a multinational and you have half of your locations are company owned, corporate owned, and the other half are franchised, you will want to create structures that reflect that. You might have maybe multiple brands or multiple geographic regions where you have, say, Asia Pacific versus North America versus Europe. You might have franchisees where only the franchise holder should see that particular information, and this franchise holder over here should see their particular information. So I think multi-tenancy features are really great where you need to strictly control how data comes in or is shared between them, particularly where that starts to be reflective of your business model structure in terms of partitions. And I wouldn't go overboard with getting into multi-tenancy too quickly. If your business model isn't really that complex or you don't have that many locations, I think using things like sharing can be more effective. With multi-tenancy, it can also be reflective of how data comes in. We tend to find if you've got lots of different locations, you end up with one of 2 scenarios or potentially a mix of both. The first is that you've got single systems that are used across all of your locations, but parts of each of those systems data needs to be partitioned off to each of your locations. So for example, you might have one ticketing system for all of your locations, but you need to work out this particular query of data fits for this location and this query of data fits for that location. That might be quite a complex picture, particularly if you've got tickets that can be used in more than one location by your visitors. And so you have quite complex queries of how that's recognized. The second situation is where you've got different systems that you use for different locations. So this location over here uses this ticketing system and this location over here uses this ticketing system. In the case of both of these, you might end up with a bit of both, where you've got some locations that are bunched together on one system and some locations that have each got their own, particularly if they're franchise owned. You might have some systems that are shared amongst all and some that are specific to various locations. So all of these sorts of things can tie into your decision of whether you need to multi-tenant your structure within Dexibit or not. The good news is that multi-tenancy can be applied retrospectively and it can easily be undone as well. So it's really easy to take a location and move who the account of this is, of where it sits under, and that includes creating some of those deeper layers. The biggest advice I would give is to start super simple and only introduce this complexity if you run into that as a problem, rather than kind of bake in a lot of complexity to start with.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you to everyone that has joined today. We look forward to seeing you next time.